I do want to discuss the NBA ratings though for the
Okay,
finals.
let's do it.
I I find it very. I'm not saying they're not accurate. I don't want to act like a conspiracy theorist here, but something is bizarre when you can't draw 10 million for any of the first 6 games, and then you get 16 million.
No, that makes sense to me.
Something's
I'm
a
happy.
6 million viewer jump.
Yeah, I'll tell you why it makes sense to me. First of all, there's no spinning the first 6 games. That's a very bad rating for a finals. Again, like, does it destroy like golf on the weekend or whatever? Yeah, right. But it's still the NBA finals, and
Right.
you would think they'd be able to draw more than 10 million. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Why it happened, including small markets. Neither of these teams have sort of national stars, whatever, et cetera, blah blah blah.
The
But
scheduling was bad too. Playing game on
yeah,
a
I mean, there's a
Friday
million.
Friday night.
There's a lot of reasons for it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the jump, Jimmy, like historically, there is like the viewership data does tell you that from game 6 to game 7, there is like a 65% viewership jump. So it's not the jump was not uncommon, where I think most of us were surprised. And I am sure I know this for a fact. Trust me, ESPN was surprised. I think they knew they were
How
going to
can
get
you?
they were going
Yeah,
to get a viewership bump, but I don't think they thought they'd get 16 for it.
right,
So
right.
what I think in this case happened was they got the value of some people who literally just watched one basketball game for the entire year, and that was that. And
Right.
this is just my thesis on this. Don't you think that has to be like a word of mouth? Like maybe just people at their workplace saying, "Hey, I hear there's a game 7. There was nothing else on tonight. Let's just check it out." Like, what else could it
Yeah,
have been?
I think Sunday night helped it immensely
Definitely.
with, sort of we're in the summer, school's out.
No competition.
So Sunday night helps tremendously. I don't know, maybe because it was 1,000 degrees across the country, people
Could
just
be.
wanted to stay inside.
Definitely.
And, after that game, for most sports fans, I'm not speaking for all, but for most sports fans, that game is the end until the football season starts. Like
Yep.
of your sports watching. So listen, if you tell me that game gets 13 million, 14 million, I say, oh, okay. From 9.2 million in game 6 to 16.3 million in game 7, I find that astonishing.
But the NHL Stanley Cup final last year, huge jump from game 6 to game 7, much less watched sport. World Series game 7s historically pop.
Right.
Now, again, a lot of those
Yeah,
big pops for game 7, involves the Cubs or the Red Sox. But there's at this point, like between Nielsen, between a much better measurement now in 2025, there would be too many people who would have to be quote unquote in on the conspiracy for the numbers to be BS. But like
I don't think they're BS. It's just hard to believe.
One of the realities, though, is Nielsen over the last 12 months has much better out of home measurement now, particularly for sports. So they're getting better measurement when it comes to bars, restaurants, airports, and places like that. I have no doubt game 7 was helped, but every sport was helped by that. But I will say this, Jimmy, like they got such a bailout on that because it's not that the final viewership number is like the greatest of all time in terms of the average of whatever it was 10 point whatever, but the fact alone that they could have a headline that said we had the most watched game in 6 years for a league that has at times really had some bad viewership stories.
Well,
big bailout. And then that number, by the way, interestingly enough, you're not going to see most of this because the only people who are like really deep into viewership are people nerds like myself and John Lewis. The ESPN's postseason NBA viewership up over last year, so they beat last year.
Right, but the spin of the last game doesn't offset how bad the first 6 games was for me, at least.
All it does is prevent a catastrophic rating. It doesn't. Right. It does now. But my thesis on this, and we'll see if I turn out to be correct, would be you get one big market in next year,
right?
Viewership's going up.
Well, I would also say this, like you say, biggest single game viewership in 6 years. They haven't had a game 7 in NBA Finals in 6 years.
Correct. Right.
Like
the last one that popped this was a game 6 between the Raptors and Warriors. Right. Listen, the NBA.
I still think
they need a post. They're going to have to figure out who the post LeBron, Steph Curry stars are of the league. And we'll
That's
see
it
if they
more than
emerge.
anything else.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. I think they need to fix the schedule. I don't think, showing, like, as a viewer, I want them to show the introductions. That's not affecting the rating. There are some people who want them to show the anthem. I couldn't care less about showing the anthem, but that's not going to affect the rating.
I mean,
Stephen A. ranting and raving, that's not going to affect the rating.
Yeah, it just, I mean, I saw, I think Mike McCarthy had it in front office sports. He actually had some good suggestions. All that stuff does is make it feel bigger as an event. And
Right.
I think that's good. But yes, at that point, you are either tuning in, right, at 8:15 to watch the game or not.
Right.
And having the pregame introductions or the decals, it's not bringing you there, but it will, I think,
Right.
it will make your experience better, though, if you're watching it.
You hit on what I think was the biggest issue is, well, you have small markets. That's the biggest issue. I mean, Oklahoma City is really
Tiny.
one of the smallest.
Yeah.
And the NBA is in this post LeBron, Steph Curry world right now in terms of NBA finals. That's the issue, because those people, those two guys, LeBron even more so than Curry, brought in the fringe viewer.
Casuals.
No one on the Pacers or OKC is bringing in the fringe viewer.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is this is where, like, it's so frustrating because I wish more people sort of like would pay attention to viewership, but like a lot of this stuff is cyclical. 2 years ago, the NCAA men's basketball final, those viewership numbers were an absolute catastrophic nightmare. You then pop 1 year later and you get a better viewership number. Like, you have a Cooper.
But wasn't that the TBS, CBS difference?
Right. I was going to also say too, like you go from you go from network, like over the air network, to cable. There are certain years on the sport, like depending on the sport, where like a player comes in and game changes stuff. You literally are living through the greatest example is Caitlin Clark. Like has literally Tiger Woodsified the WNBA when it comes to viewership. So this stuff the only league which seems to be immune to all this is the NFL, where like people are just going to watch no matter what. Maybe like stars always emerge there, but they don't need a LeBron James or a Steph Curry. Like they already have you watching. But all these other sports do need they need something oftentimes to get a pop. Like for instance, like Dodgers, Yankees, that was a pop. If this year is, if it's the Rays versus, what's a small market National League team?
The Brewers.
Rays Brewers, that ain't hitting. That's not popping 10 million until Game 7. I can promise you that.